Hello, I'm Jared Nyberg. Welcome to JagaVision episode 112. This is 112 weeks of tea, of good conversation, of talking about some different stuff. Yeah, we've had some great people on. This is us coming back after a 2-week break, so I come back rested and feeling pretty jazzed. In a couple days here, I'm really stoked about a series that we are bringing to the courtyard. We do once a month. It's our musical tea Saturdays. That's happening. While I was away, traveled over to Bowen Island and released a gin with the Copper Distillery. Brought my band Truth and Dolphin, and we were able to perform there. Had a really good time. The Tencha and Yuzu Gin. Everybody who's watching, you need to check them out. Copper Distillery does such an awesome job, and if you're on Bowen Island, you need to go check them out. Also, what we've been up to, we've been designing some new herbal teas. We have a peppermint, butterfly, pea flower, and rosehip that's around the corner about to launch. We have been drinking lots of different micro lot yabukitas from Yamaguchi. There's just been so much fun times happening. So yeah, lots to share. But today I figured we should go and we should talk about our Jin Jun Mei. So our Jin Jun Mei needs more love than I've been giving it. It is such an awesome tea. And so today's show, Sister Speak is mid-tour. I'm not sure if she's going to be joining us or not. That being said, if she does, then we'll just be talking a little bit about the pros and cons of different extraction methodologies. So I want to talk about Gong Fu Cha. I want to talk about a long steep that's more popular in a cafe setting. Also, if you want to use less leaf, that kind of idea. The pros, the cons, and what kind of flavor dynamics we're going to pick up from one versus the other. So, what do I have? I have a Jin Jun Mei. And it is lovely. Okay, my scale says update. What does that even mean? Update my scale. Okay, I don't know. That's funny. Okay, I'm going to switch the camera angles so you guys can see what my hands are doing here. There we go. You should be able to see now. So my my scale says update, so I'm going to go and switch that out and use this scale, same one. I'm going to measure out 4 grams. So whenever I'm making a Gong Fu Cha, I like to figure out how big the gaiwan is, and for those who haven't worked with the gaiwan, that is what this setup here is. This is a little tiny cup. It has a lid that you put on top of it, and this is used for a really classic style of tea preparation. So what I want to do is figure out how big it is. In this case, this is about 100 it's about a little under 90 mils, so that's 3 ounces. I like to use about, if it was 120 mil, I'd use 5 grams. If it's 90 mils, I like to use a little closer to 4 grams. I know that's a little bit stronger. The thing with Gong Fu Cha is that it is a very intuitive process. So in a smaller vessel with a little bit more tea, I'm just going to brew a little faster. So my flash infusions are just going to be that much faster to pull out flavors that are going to be interesting. So going to start like you do with a Gong Fu Cha. I'm going to just pour water over top of the leaves to give it a nice rinse. Pour it out. You don't really need to rinse this tea, in my opinion. This Jin Jun Mei is just so beautiful right off the bat. I don't get any. It's been really well cleaned. I don't get any dust. And then I'd like to just set my timer on my scale here and just let it count up and see what happens. So I feel about 80% full. And again, that's kind of in the 80 gram mark for my amount of water that I'm using. Most folks would just pour on here because then you don't get that mess of a splash of water. Like, what's the point of this tea stage if I'm not using it, right? Okay, so really, seriously, about 30 seconds max. That's already going a little bit strong. 20 seconds would probably do it. There we go. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this around, change layout. Let's go with the tiled. Yeah, auto tiled, and make that. Okay, actually. Okay, so just switched up my screen here so that we can see the tea and me at the same time. So this is the nice liquid that you see here. It's like a nice amber. I'm smelling toasty, kind of. Is that acorn? We were talking about acorn today. I got acorns in my head. Maybe more likely it's a yam. I get a lot of yam in my Yunnan crimson teas. This does remind me of that flavor aromatic. So really bassy. Gonna pour that into my cup here. You can see really clean and clear liquid. Let's give that a sip. Yeah, really floral, rich, smooth, beautiful. That's actually fantastic. So what I like to do, or what I've been encouraging people to do that are in a cafe setting, is they don't have to go with the long brew. We're going to make that in just a moment here. Instead, what they could do is they could just make multiple flash infusions. They could be going, you know, take it about 20 seconds per infusion. You're hanging out with the tea, and then you're going to, when it's hit that 20-second mark, you're going to just add it to the previous infusion. So, like that. And then combined together, they're fantastic. You get a lovely tea. Combining the first and the second steep together, you can do 3, 4, 5 infusions all mixed together. If you want to make enough for a larger cup, like 12 ounces, you could do that. I don't really see the point, though. I love drinking tea this way. When you have tiny cups, you do a smaller gaiwan, you have less room in the brewing vessel, and you fill it up with a good solid amount of tea. I think you're going to just have a better experience with your tea. You're going to get more out of it. You're going to get more flavor. You're going to get more nuance. It's going to have a nicer texture. There's so many reasons why you would choose this way of brewing a tea whenever you can. That being said, it is by far more popular to brew this quite differently. So the long brew method, and I'll fill up some hot water here. So the long brew method is more common in cafes, and you would definitely see it in North America. The average household is definitely going to be brewing their tea this way. I don't think that you'll see many people using a scale, but what you will see is a small amount of tea for a large amount of liquid. So this is long brew. I'm going to stop my timer, and I'm going to add in about, let me do 3.5. So I'm going to do 3.5 grams. So again, I like to figure out how big my vessel is, my brewing vessel, and then ideally it's going to be bulbous. You're not going to have a lot of room. You don't want to have a lot of area in the pot that doesn't have water in it. You want to, the biggest pot you should be working with is something like this, which is 180 mils or 6 ounces. That's going to let you do a pretty good job. Now, this actually fills right up to 210, so I'm going to plan around 210. I like to use a gram of Jin Jun Mei for every 30 mils of water. So if I was brewing in a much larger pot, I could increase the tea to compensate. But of course, that's going to make preparing a tea in that moment a little bit more expensive. I'm not even sure if you really need to drink that much of the first infusion, especially when you can get multiple infusions. In my opinion, this is not the smart way to go about making tea. But again, it is really popular way of doing it, and I think it's because of this kind of idea that tea doesn't. I think that there's not a lot of folks who are really concerned about over steeping their tea. I think it's becoming more of a thing now, but for quite a long time, people would just leave the water on the tea leaves, and they would just kind of feel that if it was too weak, then just leaving the tea leaves in there would somehow fill up some sort of flavor vacuum, and then you'd be left with this, you'd be drinking a tea that tastes good because you've let it extract long enough. But the opposite side of that coin, where if you let it brew for a really long time, I don't think there was a lot of connection with the fact that's likely over extracting the tea. So what I'm going to do here is 1 gram for every 30 mils. I'm going to give it a good 4 minutes. And this is very much popular in Europe. Your English teas are often made this way. And I say English teas, I should call them English teas, like your English tea brewing style. England doesn't grow a lot of tea, very, very little. The biggest exporter of tea in the world. It has 1, 2, 3 little tiny tea farms that I'm aware of. So they're mostly importing, blending, and exporting. Okay, so that is fantastic. Like really, the Jin Jun Mei as a Gong Fu Cha, where you're doing this larger dose, a smaller brewing vessel for short infusions. Again, hands down to me, that's just so beautiful. And then I'm going to compare that to using less. So to put it in comparison, I was using 4 grams of tea for 80 mils of water. So that's 1 gram for every 20 mils. In this case, I have 210 mils, and I've only used 3.5 grams for my long infusion. If I was going to equate that, if I was going to use the same ratio, then 210 gets 10.5 20 mils. So that's how much grammage I would need to be using to get the same ratio of tea. So instead of 10.5 grams, I have used 3.5 grams. So less than half, if not closer to 1/3 of the dose that I used in the Gaiwan. What will that do? It's not going to make a bad tea. You're going to have a nice tasting tea. But I think where you lose out on is the texture. You lose out on the multiple infusions. Like I can only steep this maybe 2-3 times max. So when I do it as a Gong Fu Cha, though, I can get 4 or 5, and depending on the tea, it can go upwards of 7, 8, 9, 10 infusions. So there's quite a lot that you can, that you can get out of it. And so again, in my opinion, that's where it's at. But the proof is in the pudding. So we're going to drink this. We're going to see what it tastes like. If it's even better than all this logic, all this sort of observations, we can just throw out the window because I mean, we make these assumptions, but we really need to taste them and make sure. And I kind of make I've been of the opinion for a long time in my professional career that if I can't taste the difference, then I don't make the change. I think that the way that we drink and eat and enjoy things, it's a very personal experience. So the more we're able to go like, hey, I'm gonna make this change because I can taste it. I talk about that with oxidation. If you're storing something well and you can taste that has a big it improves the flavor of the tea, then store it well. If you can't taste your tea is oxidized, it's not that you're somehow an inferior palate or something like that. It's just that's great because you don't have to be as careful and you can't taste the difference. But when you start to be able to taste the difference, then make the change. That's kind of how I look at it. And when I don't know something, I don't kick myself about it. But when I learn something and it proves to be true to me, then I try to adhere to these new principles or these new sort of ideas that I'm coming around to. And we're always adapting and changing as we go. So yeah. At any rate, I used to brew my crimson teas this way all the time, and I'm really come around to enjoying them as a Gong Fu Cha extraction. So Gong Fu is literally the same characters as Kung Fu, so it's quite the spiritual art harder to pin down with scales and stuff. So the fact that I'm using a scale kind of breaks rules already. But I know that there's folks out there that do also like to weigh at least their tea dose. They likely don't weigh their water or control their steep time, but at least knowing the mass of tea that they're working with is helpful for a lot of people. Okay. Gonna drink that. Okay, so again, I got that nice potato smell. Getting honey this time around, and that's exciting. And that's still a lovely way to have it. Noticeably a lot thinner, but not necessarily unenjoyable. Like actually, it's quite nice. And that hot temperature is really important. You want to use boiling water for this particular tea. Every tea has, of course, its own criteria, but I think that you can get all out of this tea if you use the appropriate water temperature. So for me, if I'm going to compare long brew versus short brew, Gong Fu Cha versus a more traditional North American approach, again, I get more flavor, I get more extractions. I really enjoy drinking my tea out of smaller cups. I feel like it cools a little bit faster. I can taste a little bit more. And I don't think that whenever I brew quite a lot more like this, when I'm brewing 180 mils or 210 mils or what have you, I find that I gravitate to larger cups. I don't get as much out of them because they don't cool as fast. Larger liquids stay hotter longer. I like that idea of brewing hot at the beginning and then it cooling quite quickly for me to drink, so it's a very enjoyable drinking temperature. Some people, though, the cons of this especially are those that want a large cup of tea that they want to warm their hands and just sort of enjoy the evening sitting there with a large volume of hot liquid. And for that, maybe Gong Fu Cha isn't your best choice, but if you move fast enough, you are producing quite a lot of liquid. I think it can be quite warming. And it's there's an interesting sort of conversation that you get to have with that tea experience. You get to really be engaged in it. And I think with the long brew, it's once and you drink it and you're like, oh, that's good. And then I'm doing other things kind of idea. Whereas when I'm doing Gong Fu Cha, I'm really there. And one of my favorite things to do is to bring a kit like this out into the woods and to drink tea out in the forest and enjoy it that way. And I'm definitely going to have it Gong Fu Cha style when I'm out in the woods. So I hope that was interesting for you. Today's show is going to be really short. I really appreciate you tuning in. This is JagaVision. You can catch us next week, same time, 2 o'clock. We're on every Thursday. You can check out archived episodes on our YouTube channel. If you choose subscribe, then that would be fantastic. You'll know, especially if you click the bell button, when we go live, and you can tune in. We often have guests on the show. We're drinking tea together, asking them about their tea projects or their various things that they're doing, and we have a grand old time. So I hope you tune in. I hope you check out some of the old 111 episodes we have in our archives. And thank you again for watching. I'm Jared Nyberg, JagaSilk. You can go to jagasilk.com and grab some Jin Jun Mei. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day. Take care. Goodbye.